Let's talk about micronutrients, because this is actually one of your expertises, and I think it's fascinating. You do a lot of work studying how to raise the tide on global nutrient adequacy, which I think is super cool. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of my work starting in my PhD was looking at the global level. When you look at either the food supply, so it's sort of like how many calories of each food are available for the population on average for each person. And so you get this kind of high level picture of what the diet may look like. And when I started that work, we analyzed the risk of inadequacy, kind of some sort of marker of the diet. And we found just huge inadequacies around the world. So these are in things like vitamin B12, in iron, in zinc, in calcium, right? And then we go down to the diet level. So if you kind of measure what people eat, what are you putting into your body, or you model it in some way, you see huge gaps as well. And then you go down into the biomarker level. So now you're testing people's blood, and you're seeing, what is your serum ferritin, which is a marker of iron deficiency. You see those nutrients lacking as well. So to me, I think it's a fascinating problem that our food system, the foods that we eat, are not actually dense enough in nutrients to nourish us, to meet the essential nutrient requirements that we need. And what a lot of people are surprised to hear is that, they may think, in Africa, in countries where they don't have access to a lot of foods, that makes a lot of sense. They can't get enough nutrients. And that is where the deficiencies are the highest. You see probably up to 90% of the population has the deficiency. What's surprising is that actually here in the US, we have deficiencies. We have vitamin D deficiency. We have iron deficiency. We have inadequate choline, inadequate magnesium. The list goes on. You look at the UK, folate deficiency, vitamin B12, vitamin D deficiency, iron deficiency. And so there's something going on. Like we didn't evolve to sort of eat foods that didn't meet our basic requirements. So what's going on there? And that's kind of what got me interested in that, is how do we actually rise the tide? What do we do about the diet to change it, to start nourishing people and meeting the basic essential nutritional needs?
Now, do you think that the root cause is isolated to the overconsumption of ultra-processed foods, or do you think that it's goes even broader than that and encapsulates maybe our declining soil health, climate issues and things like that?
It's all of it. So yeah, if you think back to when agriculture started to be the norm in societies, or I guess when society turned into society, not just hunter-gatherers, about 10,000 years ago, when the diets, we know very little about what our ancestors, in the Paleolithic, what they ate from this evolutionary perspective, but we do know that the nutrient density was much higher. And the reason for that is a lot of animal source foods, wild animal source foods, so often lean. You have wild plants, so dark leafy greens, herbs, berries. Now, what we did in the agricultural period when we started is we said, okay, now we know how to cultivate crops. So that's great. We don't need to go out. You don't need to go out and hunt. We don't need to forage. We're going to start growing corn or whatever, wheat, these different crops. Understandably, to make things easier, we wanted higher yields. Let's produce more, as much as we can. Then we add fertilizer, and we selectively breed these crops to be higher in starch. We breed the blueberry to be bigger. We breed the apple to be bigger. But what happened there is that the nutrient density declined. Now, that wasn't intentional. But now we're living in this world where the foods that we eat today are vastly different from the foods available a few hundred years ago through that process. Now, there's some work, there's this term biofortification, nutrient-enriched crops, where we're now starting to breed crops to add back in that nutritional value. And so that's a positive thing. So that's one thing. The other thing is the refining of things. So even if even if the food had the same nutrient density, if you strip you refine the grain, you are going to lose a lot of those nutrients. So we are getting hit by that as well. Now a lot of our foods are processed and even ultra processed, so the nutrients are getting stripped out. You talked about climate. With more CO2 in the atmosphere, that actually reduces the nutrient content, mineral content, iron, zinc, calcium, protein. And so it's not looking good. Like, whatever your view is on climate change, all of the evidence says that as the climate warms, the nutrient content of these crops declines. So we're already struggling to meet our nutrient needs. It's just going to get worse. And then when you talk about, is it just these ultra-processed foods? Now, this depends on where you are. In the U.S., the main cause is that we're eating these ultra-processed foods. They're also nutrient poor. If you're in Africa, in a country where the population wants to eat more healthy foods, but they can't afford it or they can't access it, they're living mostly on starch. Maybe it's corn. It's like most of their calories are coming from corn. And so that's the problem there. It's not the ultra-processed foods. It's that they have this one staple, and they're not getting the fruits, vegetables, and animal source foods, eggs, meat, fish, dairy that they may otherwise need.
It is so, I love this conversation because it's so elegant and also scary to me that the increased CO2 in the atmosphere, which is essentially plant food, is leading to a form of obesity for our crops. They're growing faster. They're becoming diluted of protein, which, by the way, we're becoming diluted of protein if you consider muscle mass, lean mass protein. And we're in turn eating those crops, and it's leading to this milieu of our population, our species ultimately being overfed but undernourished.
That's exactly right. We're overfed, undernourished, and we need to address both of those. Sometimes people think about one or the other. It's actually, they're both related. You can nourish yourself and prevent overconsumption. And so I think that's the other side of things too. Like if you're going to be nourishing yourself, the foods need to be nutrient dense because you're not going to be eating a ton of excess calories. You got to get your nutrition into a reasonable amount of overall food. And so that's exactly right. These foods need to be nutrient rich and not causing this overconsumption or the chronic disease risk that's blowing up today.
Are you at all familiar with literature on the satiety impact of various micronutrients? We talk about like protein a lot in the context of satiety, but somebody I follow, Marty Kaplan, I think is his name.
Yeah.
He flagged to me that on X at some point that calcium is very satiating. That among micronutrients, calcium seems to be like the most related to satiety.
I think that makes sense from my understanding, and Marty's great. My understanding is that so let's rewind a little bit. Okay, so the studies where if you've sort of seen looking at wild herbivores and understanding that if you give an herbivore, let's just say, whatever it is, but the herbivore access to a diverse pasture with crops of all different species, they will self-select to meet all of their nutritional needs. Okay. Now, there have been studies in humans. So there's been studies in young children who are just starting to eat food. So, 6 to 23 months of age. And if you put a variety of nutrient-dense foods, just of diversity, maybe some organ meat, some liver, some eggs, dairy, things, they will eat nutritionally what they need. So I think the micronutrients play a role there. The problem is that in our current food environment, like in the US, it's so warped from our ability to just regulate what we eat. I think the micronutrient picture is a small factor. Like if you have, let's just say you fortified all of the ultra-processed foods and you added calcium, there's no question to me that people are going to overconsume, right? It's not going to be like, I got my calcium, so I don't want this donut.
And that might lead to other
donut away.
unintended consequences as well, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to say there's no basis in that. I just think it's probably a small piece of the pie, so to speak, if you think about the overall issue with our food environment today.
Very cool. Now, is the solution as simple as everything that we've discussed thus far? Do you think that there's merit to that this warrants supplementation, knowing that even among whole foods, our whole foods are becoming, less and less nutrient dense over time?
Really depends on the nutrient. So some nutrients like iodine, very hard to know how much are in the product that you're eating because it depends on the soil content. The most reliable source is animal source foods like dairy. But if you're not in control, many of these same products, if you grow it in one region, it may have just enough iodine, no problem. And you grow it in another region, it's low in iodine, and you could develop a deficiency. So for those types of nutrients, either having some fortification, so iodized salt, if you don't eat that, having a supplement, probably important just to make sure you can get enough. Other nutrients, it really depends. So like iron, we talked about women of reproductive age, 1 in 5 are deficient. Iron, you don't want to have excess free iron in your body. It can be harmful. What you would want to do in that case is, in general, it's preferred to get most of your nutrients through foods. There's a bunch of reasons for that. There's this food matrix effect. Our body is more able to process those nutrients and avoid excess and avoid, But with iron, if you're low, you're going to want to supplement. So it's really about getting tested. Like if you're a woman of reproductive age, 15 to 49 years of age, you should get your iron checked. And if you're low, you supplement if you need to, or you can try to eat more, iron-rich foods. It really just depends. I think vitamin D, if you're getting enough sunshine and you don't have a lot of risk of, sun damage or whatever, that may be enough if you're eating a lot of fatty fish. But for most people, vitamin D, you're going to need to take a supplement or get it through fortification where it's added. You'll see in a lot of milk products, you'll see added vitamin D, right? I take a vitamin D3 and K2 supplement just to make sure I can get it. And of course, if I'm getting a lot of sunlight, I don't need it as much. So yeah, our food today is less nutrient dense than it was. If you just go back in time, it gets more and more nutrient dense. And so yes, there is some, I think, supplementation that's probably required for most people. At the very least, thinking about how can I eat a more nourishing diet and make sure I have my iron needs met, my vitamin D, my, it depends on if you're a vegan, for example, you're going to want to make sure you have calcium. You may need to consider adding calcium. So it depends on your overall diet. But I do think that we have to be careful. And even though it's ideal to get it through foods, in many cases, that's not realistic. And people will need to turn to supplementation.
You mentioned iron and vitamin D. What are some other nutrients of concern today?
So in the U.S., it's a lot of plant source ones. So like magnesium, potassium, and
magnesium is incredibly difficult to get from food.
It is. You have a lot of hemp seeds.
Yeah. Like how is I don't know if it's the RDA or the RDI, but like how is one on a daily basis to get the amount of magnesium that we need from food? I mean, I supplement with magnesium because otherwise I know for sure I would not be meeting my needs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It probably has to do with the fact that most people don't consume a healthy diet. And I think with certain nutrients, the RDA is actually hard to meet even with a healthy diet just because of the amount of the nutrients in our foods today. And so, yeah, sometimes you need to supplement. Now with potassium, I think the point is more you should be eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and stuff, right? I don't think I would just say just forget all of that and just supplement with potassium. Like I think that you want to eat whole foods as much as you can.
Well, potassium also is abundant in salmon and beef.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize that.
Yeah. And dairy, other animal source foods too.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.